Hey guys, welcome back to the Danger Planet. This is Doug.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we have a piping hot, spicy take for you guys, looking at the new witness keyword from Wyrd for Malifaux. Witness me! Okay. That is actually going to be released and for distribution out at GenCon. And today we're going to go through a little bit of the lore from Damian Ravencroft, who's the master for the witness keyword.
Yeah.
We're also going to go over some core play mechanics and just generally what we like, what we don't like, and whatever else is spicy.
And the only thing I can guarantee is that these takes will be exceptionally spicy.
The spiciest.
So, yeah. So Damian Ravencroft has been a character since the very first edition of Malifaux. He was actually released in sort of, not as a model, but in the story, a puzzle box, which was in the Twisting Fates rule supplement, which was also the first time that we got like the effigy models and like the Guild Exorcists and a bunch of other cool stuff. So Damian was originally, as far as I can tell from the story, a rogue, magic user, maybe an Arcanist, although that's hard to say, that the guild seemingly has either framed or has tricked into murdering somebody, and eventually he became captured by Sonia Creed. Sonia Creed and the Witch Hunters used a place in Malifaux in the guild keep called the Yellow Crypt to turn him into a witchling thrall, or a witchling stalker, rather. And so in turning him into a witchling stalker, they basically erased all of his memories, burned the magic out of him. They talk about multiple times how singed and sort of, marked he is. And they tattooed all kinds of crazy runic script onto his flesh.
You can see he's also carrying a witchling sword.
He is. Yeah, he's carrying a runic blade that the witchling stalkers have, and the blade actually has a name in the story, but I can't remember what it's called. He has all kinds of like cool things that he did sort of in preparation for this. So he had some sort of ancient Malifaux device carve a runic spell into his skull, like the actual bones of his body, before getting captured intentionally by the witch hunters. And so at some point he left himself a clue or a way to open the magic that was in his skull now, in the form of a puzzle box. And when he opened the puzzle box, he regained all of his memories and all of the things inside him that usually would not be something that a witchling would have access to. And then he just split. That was it. He was gone. And Bellaventine Thorpe, his witchling handler, also disappeared that day. And neither of them haven't been seen since. What we have come to learn until now, what we've come to learn is that apparently either something that he did with the magic spell that he carved into his skull, or maybe something that he did to get escape or get his memories back had something to do with the Tyrant Witness, although we won't know until probably the actual book that he's going to be in comes out. But very, very cool character. But Bellaventine Thorpe, also a very cool character. She's a rogue witchling. She's left the guild. She's a guild deserter. She was a witchling thrall handler, or a witchling handler. And some of the other characters we have, like we have the Lohith story, who is also from an earlier Malifaux story where Sandeep and Rasputina were trying to help Lohith with his Gaiman problem, because he was plagued by random Gaiman just spawning everywhere in all kinds of ways. And so Rasputina brought him up into the mountains, and unfortunately he touched a soulstone geode, got absorbed into it, and then Rasputina and Sandeep had to leave him to die. And Marco Bonatti actually also is a character that was mentioned in the puzzle box lore.
Can we talk for 1 second
Of course.
about how Marco Bonatti
is
his
actually
name?
He's just
the guy from Hellboy?
Hellboy, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. He's, instead of being a dude in like a containment suit made out of smoke, he's a dude in a containment suit made out of ink. And I have no idea what the story is on this guy. I know that he was mentioned in a puzzle box as somebody that Bellaventine Thorpe was looking at trying to also turn into a witchling because they had just captured him. But I guess that didn't happen. Or maybe it did. And maybe when Damian Ravencroft left, he broke out with Marco and they brought him to somewhere to get him unwitchlinged and turned him into ink.
Is unwitchlinged a thing we're saying?
Yeah, unwitchlinged. That's what happened to Damian. He's the first who got unwitchlinged, and I'm sure that he's going to try and really unwitchling a lot more to swell his forces.
Another cool flavor component here is just like Damian is armed with a runic blade, Bellaventine is also armed with a runic blade, which is pretty cool.
Yes, indeed.
So they're carrying the weapons of Sonya's witch hunters, basically.
Yeah,
Which is cool.
which is very cool. And we even see on Bellaventine's card, like she has an ability called Guild Deserter, right?
Yeah.
So very, very cool, very lore friendly. And if you don't have, if you've never read the Puzzle Box story, it's a great read. It's broken down basically in journal entries of Damian as like a witchling thrall, and it just gets more and more detailed as he regains more memories. And you can actually buy the book that it's contained in, the Twisting Fates book on DriveThruRPG, and we'll link that down in the description.
Yeah, we'll link that.
I think it's on sale right now for like $2. So
can't afford not to buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's a great overview for the peoples of the internet.
Of course.
So why don't we go over the other biggest thing, which is actually the core thing that his keyword does, which is the configuration. Because that's pretty unique, pretty cool. Do you want to go over that really quickly?
Yeah, so the configuration basically is a set of cards that you set aside that are removed from the game. Now, you can't have more cards than you have in your hand limit, so you're initially limited to 6, although, if you have any Arcane Reservoir, that'll be 7. And
which you always do.
Which you always should in Arcanist. There's no reason not to. You have a 2-cost upgrade to give yourself Arcane Reservoir. And basically, anytime you would add a card to the configuration, you remove it from the game, putting it on this card, kind of similar to the Dreamer mechanic, where he exiles cards from his deck temporarily. And as in this case, most of the time they'll get discarded during the end phase. And although there is a little bit of way to manipulate that with some of the abilities on the models we'll talk about. But if you have 3 or more suits of a specific suit cards of a specific suit in the configuration at any time, all of the witness models in your keyword gain that suit on their dual totals, which every single one.
I think it's a big deal to take a second and call that out. So this is definitely a keyword that you're going to want to primarily play within keyword.
Absolutely, yeah.
They have a ton of overlapping abilities that feed the engine that this crew kind of needs to function.
Yep.
And
it's not just in the suit stapling, right? So the suit stapling is wild, and that lets you declare a bunch of triggers. But even on their cards, their individual abilities also have, required cards that have 9 or higher in the configuration, or requiring a 1 in the configuration, or requiring a specific, weaker, moderate, severe, or even specific suits in the configuration. So it sort of is going to be one of those situations where you have a keyword and you might want to take a versatile or 2, but generally speaking, you're probably going to be single keyword.
Yeah, I think you end up with like maybe 1 or 2 versatiles and primarily within keyword here. So I have a couple thoughts on the configuration. An interesting part that stood out to me about it was that it flushes during the end phase.
Yeah.
As it's written, right? So this is something that you don't just build up and then kind of set it and forget it. You're kind of going to have to continuously be managing the configuration stack, I guess.
Right.
And there's a couple of interesting ways that they have within the keyword to make that a little bit more consistent. And one of those is the House the Soul ability. And that's actually on a couple of these models. Mm-hmm. I know that it's on Lolith. Is that how you pronounce this guy's name?
I think it's Lohith.
Lohith?
Yeah, we have it on Lohith.
And you have it on the Puzzle Box.
Yeah, his totem. And then we also have it on the Soulstone Gaiman.
Yeah, so you can get what that strikes me as is you're going to be able to hold on at a minimum to 2 cards every configuration at the end of the turn, because it seems to me like you're always going to be taking Lowith, and you're going to obviously have the Puzzle Box.
Yeah.
And then if you really, really want to, then you can add in for some flavor a couple Soulstone Gammon or maybe 1.
Yeah, you could play 3 and keep 5 cards in the configuration the whole game.
Yeah, which would be cool. I'm not sure if that's like the exact way you want to do it.
I don't think so either, but
yeah, so that's something to consider.
Yeah.
This keyword strikes me as a keyword that has a very low floor and a very, very high ceiling.
For sure.
And what I mean by that is there's a lot of overlapping synergies and powerful abilities, but they require you as the player to be fairly proactive in managing that engine. And, this probably looks really similar to you, Brendan, because heck, if this doesn't look a heck of a lot like Dreamer 2.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say the only thing that you're really managing with Dreamer 2 is that you're trying to just get good cards in it. There's not stuff that happens and doesn't really stay there, so it's not quite as intense, I think. But I think Dreamer 2 actually inadvertently is good training wheels for Damian.
Yeah, and Jim Dyson, who's a really good friend of the channel, he's actually one of our featured channels. Great guy, really good Malifaux player. And he said something when we were talking about this today. He calls it Blueberry EVS, which is really funny because I actually play EVS as one of my primary tournament competitive keywords, and he's absolutely right in that you have to be very cognizant of the suits that are in your hand and the suits that are in the configuration.
Yeah.
So like in EVS, suits matter because they count as 9s for the cards that care about them. Whereas I guess in Witness, suits matter because you have to have a minimum threshold of often, I think it's 3 or more.
Yeah, 3 or more in the configuration to
trigger a Schmegel face ability of whatever. Yeah.
And it is, I guess, worth noting for like the few abilities that care about, mostly von Stuck's crew. It is, it's May. You don't have to add the dual total if you don't want, which is great. So you're not just going to lose to von Stuck, I guess.
Yeah.
But so the main way that we basically have to interact with the configuration outside of the few abilities here and there that do it is the repository ability, which we see on the front of a couple of cards, which is when this model activates, it may add a card from its control hand to the configuration and to then draw a card, which is great. So you're not going to lose out by doing it. Whereas like with Dreamer, you have to take activations, you have to take AP to be able to put cards into the exile pile. With the Witness keyword, that's not the case. You will put cards in, but then you get to replace them. So you can put low ones, mid ones.
100% right. And it lets you you can go in one of two directions, right? So Brandon is definitely right on this. You can do two things. You can say, I'm going to ditch my really powerful cards to put them into the configuration to be able to draw them back later, which is probably, in my mind, not the most efficient way. But what I really like doing is pitching you really crappy cards of suits that you need to trigger abilities and then hoping to cantrip into a better card. So like you're pitching like, let's say, a 1 through 6, and odds on are math says you're probably going to draw a better card than that just off the top of your deck, right? Because the average card is a 7.5 if you include the jokers, right? So any 8 or whatever better than whatever week you're discarding.
And that's certainly a way to do it. Pitching weeks into it might not turn on all of the abilities, but there are plenty of abilities in this crew that are specific suits. And hell, there's even one that is literally only functions if you have a 1, which is super flavorful. Really very cool thing. We'll talk about Legerdemain later. But
so looking at Damian Ravencroft's actual card is pretty interesting. I really like the Maintain Order ability. It kind of reminds me of one of Molly 1's passive abilities.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is really good. Like that's a marquee ability on a card to have. The other thing that really stood out to me about one of his abilities is Esoteric Debate. I am a huge fan of handing out Injured. And this one is a non-gun symbol ranged Injured that also can have blast triggers on it and drop ski markers. It seems really, really solid.
Yeah, and it's stat 6 against willpower, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. And then the biggest thing is knowledge is power. It's ranged, irreducible damage, which is the only other master that can approach doing this right now is Hoffman 2. And Hoffman 2 is a very strong master. So having this as a fast ability at 10 inches non-gun is strong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other cool thing is that his puzzle box is a really cool enabler that can either give out fast or focused really easily and is summonable back onto the board, which I really like.
Yeah. I love Masters with Summonable Totems, Dreamer, Cough. And, I think Damien has a lot of cool things on his card. I love the names of his triggers. That's really great. Like he has an infinite puzzle trigger and Knight to E5 because in the story, he like has a chessboard and it's really elaborate and part of his home base type thing. And that's very cool. A good flavor call out to them. But yeah, generally Damien seems like a pretty cool dude. I can't wait to get him on the table. And he's a master with willpower 7, He's
probably pretty cool to hang out with.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I would hang out with Damien.
He's definitely cooler to hang out with than Sonya Creed. I bet you it's really lame when you hang out with Sonya. She's probably just like...
And can you imagine how awkward it is when they both get invited to a party?
Together?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Man.
I guarantee you that they have to have some like intermediary party,
Oh, for sure. So Bellaventine Thorpe is his like sort of signature henchman, outside of Lohith, obviously, but Bellaventine Thorpe was in his story. She was his witchling handler when he was a witchling stalker, and she is a cool lady. Doug, do you want to...
So, yeah, the stuff that I think is really cool about her is she has Deadly Pursuit, which is really interesting. Reading it through her, I mean, it seems like she's kind of meant to be a pseudo beat stick with a little bit more utility kind of smattered onto it. I really like Arcane Firearm. It's the ability to give out stunned on a gun is really powerful at a stat 6. I guess it says if the willpower is 6 or greater, it gives out stunned. But most of the time, the models that have willpower 6 or greater are going to be probably mostly pretty powerful, like masters, henchmen, expensive enforcers type thing. I really, really like the I've got your back trigger for magical dampening. I think that's pretty powerful. I like her. I think she's good. I always like beat sticks to have deadly pursuit because it means you need to spend less AP actually taking move actions with the model, and you can spend more AP using the arcane firearm or her runic blade, which I think is good.
Yeah, with drain magic and add some burning trigger. I think she seems very good. She seems like a sort of beat sticky henchman that is going to be able to really be some sort of tactical defensive maneuvers.
She's also really good. Like you called it out before, the guild deserter ability.
Oh yeah,
is actually funnily really good.
Yeah,
against the guild because they want to take the focus action. A lot.
And you're gonna deadly pursuit up into their grill, and then they're not going to be able to concentrate. And she has arcane shielded 2, 9 health. She's a henchman. Defense 6, willpower 5. That's not great, but she pulses out healing. There's cool things. There's cool things that she does. I think she's very survivable, and we'll see how good she is.
Yeah.
So his other henchman, of course, is Lohith. So Lohith was the first model that we saw spoiled in the witness keyword, he was a guy who just was sort of plagued by Gaiman when he came to Malifaux, and he is like merged physically with a massive soulstone geode. So he's like part soulstone now, and it's wild.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of abilities that help the engine of the crew run. There's a couple of really cool things on his card. I'm a huge fan of Lantern of Souls. Whenever I see it on a card, that's the anti-demise ability, which is really, really important to have access to, especially after Burns has released. And there's a lot of really nasty demise abilities out there, like Max 2s, for example. He's also got a lot of abilities that just synergize with what the crew is trying to do. And on top of that, he's a stat 6 min 3 beater. I would say the only knock on him from my perspective is that he's stat 5s across the board and 10 points. So he carries a lot of utility on his card, but it seems like it's a model that you also want to make sure you protect and keep alive.
Yeah, and he does sort of enable that a little bit, right? He has the Living Soulstone ability. So once per activation, if Lohith uses a Soulstone, he can pitch a card that is 9 or greater from the configuration to the discard pile to gain a Soulstone. And now that once per activation is actually probably pretty huge, because if you load up the configuration with a bunch of cards and somebody goes after him, they could inadvertently just give you infinite Soulstone use. And I mean, maybe that's a little crazy, but I really like that.
Yeah, he's good.
I want to see that happen.
I think he's a model that you see most of the time in this crew. Again, my one caveat here is that he's a 10-point model, and sucks to lose a 10-point model to a min 3 beater. So the next one is we'll talk about Marco. I'm a huge fan of Marco.
Yeah, for sure.
The first thing that I noticed on his card was actually Ink Fingers. So Ink Fingers is an ability that one of the Explorer's versatiles has Tannenbaum. And it's just really, really interesting because so many high-level matches I've been in have come down to players sitting on a turn 1 red joker or 2 or 3 turn 1 13s in their hand. And then, they just dump it on turn 2 or turn 3 when the rubber meets the road, proverbially.
For sure. And that's what I love so much about Zoraida 1 is the ability to deny the opponent, the ability to do that, or camp the black joker or camp the red joker for when they really need it. It just, no, you just don't get to.
Yeah, and then the other thing that really caught my attention is the fact that, so Grasping Tentacles is the tactical action I'm looking at. Yeah. And the big thing that I'm looking at is that it requires a 6 of tomes, and you get to unresisted push all models within 2 inches in any direction, and the models that move that way suffer a damage. So this is a very common ability in the EVS keyword, and I've played a lot with Massive Tentacles.
Well, there's 2. It's on Max and the machine guy.
But you always take those.
Yeah. I mean, you'll have it. Yeah.
And so
I'm not surprised that you're the one calling out the Massive Tentacles trigger.
So it's really, really strong. I've played with this ability a lot, and it's exceptionally good. It's good for ping damage. It's good for large repositioning. I'm really excited to try it. I also think that his fast action Lashing Tendrils is really strong because it's push movement that's attached to a fast action.
Yeah.
And the way that I always try to consider fast actions on models is this fast action roughly equivalent to maybe what a normal AP could accomplish? And those are the best fast actions. And if we look at this guy's card, that fast action could very easily be considered a move AP with grasping tentacles attached to it, which is just really good.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I have access to lashing tendrils from the Malifaux. It's the same bonus action. It's massively powerful. It's such a good ability. Huge fan.
It's a good fast action, I think. And I don't love his 4 willpower, but he's 6'4", 5'2".
Yeah,
he's a 7 cost.
I mean, I think the other thing that's really good is that 2, 3, 4 one-ish melee. That's not great, but 6 against defense is okay, and it gains staggered, and it's not staggered conditional upon damage, right?
Yeah.
So if you if you get close to him, which he can obviously make you do, he's gonna stagger people in melee, and that's really good.
Yeah, I think my takeaway on this guy is for 7 points, he's really efficient and does a lot of really good things.
Yeah, and he can low-key, I guess, with a crow on his melee, ignore resistance triggers because he has a crow trigger to make the target lose all suits in their duel, which means you can't declare any triggers, including resistance triggers. So
yeah, I would. That
might be a thing to look at.
I would be fine almost including this guy in any witness build just because of that fast action that moves out of sequence. It's good.
Yes.
At
last, we have another magician-y lad because we didn't get one of those. I'm gonna paint him and Dorian, and they're gonna hang out together. I don't care what I have to do it. So we have Legere Domain. He is a pretty cool model. I'm super pumped to build him.
So someone else on our Discord made this a point, and I super agree with it. It feels like he should have had the performer keyword on him.
He should. Why isn't he witness performer? It's because him and Dorian. I'm gonna hire Dorian out of keyword.
You can still just hire this guy out of keyword. I mean, he goes from 7 cost to 8. It's fine. Like whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was reading his card, and I usually love false claim. That's an amazing ability. It enables so much scheming.
Yeah, I agree.
And manipulative diversion. Those are both really good abilities. But the thing that really, really got me going was showmanship. So during opposed duels, he gets to cheat face down, and he always cheats face second. So whether he wins or loses, you are basically going to be able to control the duel, and your opponent doesn't get to know where you're at. And I love that. It's such a cool thing to have happen.
It breaks the traditional ebb and flow of how duels normally occur in Malifaux.
Yeah.
And the thing that really messes me up about that ability, I'm trying to think like if I was playing against Witness and my op was like, face down, let's go. It's like, oh man, this is really annoying because now I don't know if my 11 is good, if I needed a 12, or if I needed a 13 in like a hard duel, and I don't want to cheat in an 11 and end up losing by like 1 point.
Yeah.
So it creates this really, really kind of schmegely mind game with your opponent where you're like, I dare you.
Yeah, and mind games on your opponent are just really great.
They're just good times for everyone.
And then
except your opponent.
I guess the other thing that I really like about his card, we have Expert Thief, so he can steal soul stones from people. I love it. So it's stat 5 against defense, and you have to hit either a master or a henchman. So the likelihood of it actually resolving aren't super great unless you consider the fact that he just gets to cheat face down. So maybe you get it, maybe you don't, and you take a soul stone from their pool and add it to yours. And also you can just get a quick bonus if you have a mask. So
also delusion seems insane. It's a fast action that like can force a pseudo obey.
Yeah, and it's like sort of an obey, sort of a lure in whatever direction you want
as a fast action.
As a fast action,
it's just better than lore. It just says
you can ignore terrain on the crow trigger, so you can just blip people through buildings.
Yeah,
how do they recover from that? Man, what a magician! Can I just say?
What a time to be alive.
So we have just 2 minions sort of in this keyword, which might be a little light, but obviously it's a brand new keyword, so I'll forgive them that. We have the Dabbler and the Soulstone Gaiman. So the Dabbler is very interesting. The Dabbler model is actually the only dual keyworded model. It's both Witness and Whiz Bang.
Whiz Bang.
So we have a little buff to Wong in the fact that we have a new model. I think they have a couple cool things. I mean, they have like the very whiz-bangy shockwave. They can get glowy tokens. They get some arcane shielded, which is nice.
They have a repository proc, so that feeds the engine.
Yep, and you got to feed the engine.
Gotta feed the engine, bro.
They're blast resistant and all that good jazz. But I think sort of the far and away thing that they have is they have a trigger, I guess, on their 10-inch gun that can stun things.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I mean, that's probably like the best thing on this card.
You're talking about from mountain to valley?
From mountain to valley. And also, they can drop a scheme marker with their shockwave action. That's probably also good, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this. These guys seem fine, but not that great, although that fish model is wildly cool.
Well, I think an important thing to remember here is that it's realistically probably either going to be a Dabbler or a Soulstone Gammon that's holding your Arcane Reservoir upgrade, because you need that to proc
for sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
The +1 card. And then the other thing that I think makes them fine is they're like not super expensive. So like you're figuring like you probably have a Dabbler and the Dabbler doesn't really get in combat all that much. So seems like a good target for Arcane Resi.
Yeah.
Which you like clearly need for this crew.
Oh, for sure. I think though it is worth noting that we do sort of see this like trigger synergy on them. So they have a tome and a crow, and a crow and a tome on their 2 attacks. And of course, when we have the configuration set up properly, we should be able to guarantee procs for minions with the tome, or guarantee procs for minions with the crow, or maybe even both. But you know, being able to have having a range 10 stat 5 shot action that just always stuns things is much better than one that you have to hope for a specific trigger on a minion.
I also do really like Remake the Earth trigger. It's a once per turn trigger on Lightning Strike. That's really strong.
Yeah. So like, you know, the crow thing is like you either stun and look at some cards, or you can drop shockwaves and you get pushes on your melee attack. So they seem like maybe I'm underestimating them and just sort of how this plays, but we'll see once we proxy this crew up.
Yeah, I think they're decent value minion, 5 points. They're not blowing me away. They're adding to the engine, and they're a reasonable thing to slap the upgrade on, which quite frankly you should always be taking because it's a core synergy with the crew.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the last thing we have for this keyword and this hot take is the Soulstone Gaiman. He's a 4-cost minion. He's 4 health, armor. He has a demise marker to pulse out destruction of markers, just like Lohith does. He's the 4-cost way to house the soul, which lets you keep cards in the configuration. And like, you know, he has some basic abilities, like, okay, like it's sort of bad damage. He has an automatic heal 1, which seems fine, maybe.
Seems okay.
Yeah.
Seems fine.
But like, you know, he's a 4-cost card that has the ability to be upgraded.
He can also give out injured at range on a reasonable attack. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, 5 against willpower. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it's a non-gun, so like you can shoot it into combat or whatever.
And he has one of the prioritized triggers we've seen on a couple of these cards, which is like as you do an attack, you get to add a card to the configuration. So like I think that we might see Crow as being a prioritized suit in the configuration.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I needed to make sure that I mentioned here is the second I saw Witness and I was looking through the keyword and I saw the Soulstone Gammon, I had just recently seen Thor Love and Thunder. And I am telling you that a Soulstone Gammon is just a little mini Throg.
Oh.
You know, like the pleasantly attituded rock monster from Thor Love and Thunder.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. I could see that. Maybe we paint them as stone instead of geodes, and then we can, I
was going to green stuff a little, because like, obviously I think we're both buying this keyword.
Oh, for
There's
sure.
no
Yeah.
world in which we don't both end up with this.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I work at a game store and get a discount on models, and I'm windmill slamming the buy now button on the GenCon sale for sure. I want this immediately. I don't even play this faction.
Yeah, it's sick. But yeah, so I'm gonna do a little green stuff sculpting and make a Throg armor plate on his shoulder and like the little thing.
Amazing.
Because it's gonna be great.
Yeah. You know? So, you know, overall, I think this is a really interesting keyword. You know, I think that it's nice to have some really interesting and refreshing mechanics, because we've seen, you know, we sort of see a lot of remixing from other crews and other things, but in sort of a way that makes it feel really new and exciting. And also it's wild. We have a 9th master and a 9th keyword in one faction now.
Yeah, I think this is, quite frankly, one of the most eloquently designed keywords I have seen since I've started playing, which is really cool to me. And I really do believe that it's a keyword that has a very, very low floor and a very, very high ceiling. And just by saying that, kind of what I mean is, if you do a good job managing and building the engine, you can do some very powerful things.
For sure.
But it requires you to understand how the engine works, set it up, and you're not necessarily doing it with overtly powerful models in isolation of one another, which is why we were also talking about the fact that this is, quite frankly, probably a pretty synergy-heavy crew, and you don't want to be hiring out of keyword too much with them. Yeah. Now, I think the interesting thing will be, do any of these models from this keyword become staple hires in other crews?
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we quite frankly, guys, we haven't had enough playtime with this crew because, you know.
Yeah, or this faction. I mean, Arcanists are, I think, out of all the factions that Doug and I play, that's sort of the one that we just have no experience with.
Yeah. I own Rasputina, I own Mayfang, and I own Hoffman, but I haven't really gotten many reps on them. And I think they're going to have to sit behind Witness now because this thing looks super fun to run. So let us know, guys. You know, we're going to have a more in-depth review of this keyword. And we're also going to start doing in keyword tier lists where we do deep levels of analysis on all the different keywords and masters. And so we'll certainly, you know, cover these guys for that. But for now, we want to get some games in, kind of make sure that when we have opinions for you guys, they're at least somewhat formed so that when we get yelled at in the comments, we can defend ourselves.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to solving the puzzle that is the configuration, you know, and I think just thematically, it's just such a really awesome element and just lore wise, I think they completely knocked it out of the park. So well done, Wyrd. Congrats.
Yeah. This is a really cool keyword.
So, you know, keep an eye on the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out our link in the comments below for the book that I was mentioning earlier. Also check out our Discord where we talk about all the cool stuff for Malifaux and all the other things that we're into. And you know, come back and see us again.
And also, I wanted to shout out Defective Dice. He's great from a lore perspective. He's actually the person that I pinged when I was like, hey, this guy existed in M1, right? And he was like, yeah, I got you, dude. And he had immediately all of the background I needed, because for me, I'm a newer player to Malifaux. So shout out to Defective Dice. His channel's awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to do a video on exactly this soon, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. Yeah, if you guys are looking for lore on, you know, the world of Malifaux, that's a really good channel to go to. Yeah. And also Deck from Corner Case does a really good job covering the lore and the culture of kind of the Malifaux game. So check those two channels out. They're friends of the channel. Both those guys are really helpful and awesome. They also both have Discord communities. So, you know what to do. Click the button, do the thing.
Yeah.